Feeling apprehensive about retirement? Are you concerned ageism will prevent you from continuing to work at something you love or exploring a new avenue for your full expression? Our guest is a seasoned entrepreneur who helps folks over 50 shift from feeling apprehensive about retirement to excited about all the opportunities ahead. Woohoo! Don't be caged by your age. Stay tuned for the Start of Life live show. Let's glow, everyone. Hello and welcome to the Start of Life live show. I'm your host, Ande Lyons, 4 times founder and startup champion to founders around the world. And after raising 4 businesses of my own, I have a pretty good idea of what you're crawling through every single day, the occasions that you're rising up for, the moments where you're just feeling so low, you're asking yourself, why bother? And you know, that is the Start of Life journey. And what you're building is resilience and persistence and tenacity as you solve all the problems that your business faces. And that's why I'm so grateful that you carved out time to tune in and up your founder game, because I'm here to tell you, as you do better, as you improve all those skill sets, your business will do better and your startup will thank you. A big yoo-hoo to folks tuning in live, yay! And to those watching the replay, hey, how are you? And to the wonderful podcast listeners, a big love hug from Boston to you for grabbing the time and tuning in. If you are watching this via video, whatever platform you're watching from, we're live on LinkedIn and Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Please hit that like button so we can reach more folks who are seeking support, information, and less isolation from our conversation today. And if you are on YouTube, please subscribe if you have not done so already and click that notification button. And if you always want to get a deep dive alert whenever I post a new show, please hop on over to the Startup Life Live meetup group, sign up. You'll get the deep details on every guest I'm interviewing. And who knows, it may be someone whose insights and experience will be of particular value to you and your startup. So let's do some Andelicious announcements real quickly here. I always love promoting Arlen Hamilton's Academy. Hop on over there. She's always adding new information to help you and your startup experience the success you hope to achieve. I think this is still going. Yes, this is really cool. New for-profit social impact pitch competition. And application deadline is October 10th. Hop on over to rkmf.org to learn more. I think there's some big money here, and it's run by the Richard King Mellon Foundation. So I think it'd be a great opportunity for anybody with a social impact company that is for profit. Hey, look who's speaking in a few days, right? October 21st and 22nd. I am part of the storytellers for the Third Act Quest Storytelling virtual event. And you can meet me, you already know me, but other 23 inspiring third act storytellers who are sharing so many delicious insights from where they're at and what they hope to see and bring to the world after the age of 50. You know how I feel about Scroobius, everybody. If you're raising funds, you need to go over to Scroobius, check it out, and absolutely sign up, because this is a platform that will help you and your business raise capital, introduce you to investors, and help you create a video pitch, which I think is so important. And be sure to use Ande15 to receive 15% off. It's very, very affordable. And I think it's just a tremendous opportunity for you to meet other founders and get the advice and strategies you need for raising capital. And I want a huge shout out to, right here. It's Happy National Coming Out Day here in the US. And for all of you who are showing up in the LGBTQ plus community, thank you for shining your light. Thank you for paving the way and shining the way for others who are exploring, trying to come out, who are in fear. You are the representation folks need. And just a big hug to the entire community for having the courage, for standing up for who you be. I want to say hello to a few folks tuning in. Oh my gosh. Hey, Casey. Oh my gosh. I'm going to save these comments for when we get over with our guests. So let me just do a quick introduction of our wonderful, phenomenal guest who's coming to join us today. I'll pull up the artwork of her incredible business right here. It is the one and only Victoria Tomlinson. After running her own digital communications company for 30 years, Victoria Tomlinson noticed that a lot of senior employees were being recommended to her as they tried to create new roles for themselves in their retirement. She spotted a pattern, noticing that these people didn't want to be retired, but they did want to leave behind their full-time corporate job. So she solved that problem and launched Next Up, a company that helps anyone over 50 find purpose through a new role in the next stage of their lives. Through webinars, workshops, events, and guidance, Victoria and her team are turning 70% of people from feeling apprehensive about their retirement to excited about the opportunities ahead. Oh my gosh, let's give a huge round of applause for our wonderful guest, Victoria. Welcome to the show.
Ande, hi. Oh, it's so lovely to be here. Thank you.
Oh, I'm so happy that you're here. Let everybody know where you are hailing from right now.
Okay, so I'm in the UK, in the north of England, getting a bit chilly, in Harrogate. It's a very nice town. If ever you're in the UK, you have to come and visit. It's very pretty. It's very beautiful.
Oh,
Thank you,
it
Ande.
is.
So good to be here.
Well, I want to run through a couple of these wonderful comments here because, Casey recently retired from 32 years of teaching science, just here to see how people move into the next phase. Wonderful. We're so happy you're here. And hello, Ruth, hanging out in Nairobi. She's our community manager here, and she's the one who makes sure all the folks who come by live say hello. Johnny Bean. Oh my gosh, I love following you on TikTok. How are you? You're just the best. And I think you're so much fun. And I know you're thriving at any age. You're not letting your age cage you, right, Johnny? So, one thing, I love to talk about, and I just want to remind folks who are tuning in live, if you have a business, please feel free to share it. We love to amplify folks' brands here. So share your business name, your one-liner, and website URL. And Victoria and I will celebrate you and your wonderful work on the show. And don't hesitate to pop questions into the comments. You add so much value, live viewers, when we're streaming here. So be sure to let us know if you have any questions now, and replay viewers and podcast listeners later. Okay, all the links are in the show notes for you so you can move forward. So, Victoria, you have been an entrepreneurial adventurer for over 30 years. So let's go back to when you launched your business called Northern Lights. It's a PR business. I'm so curious as to what called you, what compelled you to dive into this, and if you had any role models growing up or people around you, or were you that person hustling product in third grade, or what happened?
Right, so it's a really interesting question, this, Ande, because it's taking me back a long way. I actually had a corporate career, can you believe it, before the PR business. So I was working for a banknote printing company. I used to sell banknotes around the world. And a friend of mine worked for actually Goldman Sachs. She used to do relocation. And she said, would you start a business with me? And I had never thought about starting a business. So that got a little seed going. And I didn't quite have the courage to do that. And then I went to what's EY now. And
Ernst Young?
Yeah, Ernst & Young. And I met a wonderful person, Alison Canning, and I was going to work with her at Burson Marsteller, which is a big PR company. And she started up another one within there. And she said, would you come with me and start it with me? And again, I didn't quite have the courage. But if I had one tiny little regret, I don't really do regrets, it would be that one. So people were asking me, and it kind of gets you thinking, doesn't it? And then finally, somebody wanted to marry me, and he was in the north of England up here. And he said to me, but the trouble is, what would you do up here? We're going back a long time ago, and things were very different. And he said, I can only marry you if you work, because you'll be a nightmare to live with otherwise. So I'm thinking, oh, hell, what am I going to do? So it sort of became quite a good challenge. I thought, right, I'm going to start a business. I'm just going to do it. And I suspect that was a comfort blanket, knowing I was going to be married, that you kind of feel you've got a bit of security around it. And I really admire people who start a business without any kind of comfort blanket, if you like,
Right.
around you. So that was what got me. And I was sort of thinking, what do I do? And I had some PR skills, pretty lightweight, if I'm honest. But I thought, oh, let's give this one a go. Let's give it a go. And I rang up our local big Yorkshire Post, was a sort of big business newspaper, and said, have you got many PR companies up there? And I kind of thought, I think there's an opportunity here for a business focused one. So that was how it all began. So it wasn't any great sort of burning desire. This second business is very different, very different. That was a different circumstance then.
I love that, something fierce. And folks, Victoria's story about when she fell in love and the fact that her husband knew her well enough and she was self-aware to be totally honest about who she is. Tell a little bit about that with your husband, because, partners, it's so important that they're on board with us, right? When we are doing our own business, or they understand where do we find our self-fulfillment. And it's a two-way street, folks. Us women need to look at our beloveds, male or female, and understand, or non-binary, and understand where and how do they need to be fulfilled. So Victoria, talk a little bit about that, because I love this love story.
Oh, bless. Well, yes, he has been amazing, and we're still happily married. 30, I think it's 3 years later now, and I think there was a great insight because he was a bit younger than I am. Well, he still is a bit younger than I am, and he was a partner in a law firm, and I was the only full-time working wife there, and he kind of got, that this wasn't going to be easy for him, but he wanted a kind of dynamic wife, if you like. So he supported me hugely, and he watched me make so many mistakes. And he was an insolvency lawyer, of all things. And he said, I watched your London ways. You came up here, you took on an office, you did, and I'll talk in a minute about some of my fails.
Yeah.
He watched it all, didn't say anything, and thought, oh God, here we go. And he was quite right, but he thought, she's got to do it. I can't say very much at the moment.
Right.
So he's been supportive. I never, every day I thank God for my family, for my husband and my daughters, because in the end, that's what really matters in life, isn't it?
Yes. But he understood that you needed to work. Like some women are so good at the domestic goddess scene. I am an awe and wonder of you. You know that's what makes your heart sing. You figure out ways to keep yourself fulfilled in that environment. But your husband, Victoria, knew that to have you stay at home, because remember, folks, yes, 30 years ago was only 1992, but still indoctrination about what the woman's role was, especially if she was birthing babies, was not about working full time. And so he was like, no, out, goodbye, because he knew the household would be happier. So I just wanted you to share that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, he was lovely.
And so, you as a female founder, you come in with your business, 1992, you're launching and making things happen. What was the landscape like then? Because I think it's so important for folks who were born after 1995 to really understand how challenging it can be as a female founder. I mean, you think you have it tough today, and you do, but even 30 years ago, it could have been even tougher. And so what advice do you have for female founders? What was it like then, and what advice do you have?
You know what, Ande? I'd always been a pioneering woman, and I'd started, so my very first job was a graduate trainee. I snuck in without proper qualifications and managed to come my way into getting a grad job. And that was with a company called Plessy Aerospace, which is now GE Aviation. And I was their first female graduate trainee. They had 20,000 employees. And I then went on to the banknote printing company, the youngest manager, the only female, blah, 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 all that sort of stuff. So I quite enjoyed working in a male environment. And you know what? It's easy to complain about being the only woman, but you get a lot of advantages too. So, I guess I probably played to that. And then when I went to EY, it was actually much more women, far more there. But I had that badge behind me because EY is a big global brand.
Yes.
And when I started up, and it was interesting because I've been back in touch with my old firm recently, working with partners. And I realized then that I still use that badge. I still talk about on my LinkedIn profile, a former director of EY, and that carries quite a lot of kudos.
Yeah.
And that was a huge help to me when I started my business, because it gave me that credibility when, my business wasn't known. I wasn't known in the North at
Right.
all. So I think that really helped. I used my own money, so I didn't have to go out. I'd got a bit of money when I left EY, not
Yeah.
a lot, but just enough that I could fund things myself. And I kind of bootstrapped it as I was going along quite tightly there.
Yeah.
But I was very lucky.
Well, and as a
And
service business, you were able to get funding.
that,
When you said,
exactly. So,
did
yeah,
you use a term called, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but did you say a term called Q dust?
kudos. Oh, I might have done. So I think there's a sort of kudos. Is that a good word?
I want to learn more. What does that mean?
Kind of credibility, if you like. Kind of, it's kudos is kind of it's good thing,
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it. And Mia Voss is saying, "Oh my gosh, 30 years was 1992. Now I have to go lay down."
Actually, I started my business in 1990. So,
Yeah.
in fact, I think I registered in 1989, which sounds so long ago. It's kind of
Oh
like
my
another
gosh.
lifetime. It's extraordinary.
And Victoria, folks know when Mia's in the room, I have always got to bring up her podcast. Shit We Don't Talk About with Mia Voss. Scan that QR code or go to shitwedon'ttalkaboutpodcast.com to subscribe and learn more. No one brings it like Mia. And when you were talking about the male dominated business, Mia is quite familiar with all of that. First female graduate, she loves that because she is in the construction business as well as many other brands that she does.
Yeah, you will know all about that.
And
Yes.
so also, the beauty too about your Ernst Young experience, Victoria, and this is why I always encourage anybody. I mean, you may have a lot of entrepreneurial adventures just burning to come out in you. If you can go into corporate America, if you can last 12 months even, Victoria, you're right. It adds Q dust, credibility to your portfolio, so to speak, but also it's really important to see how systems and procedures are done on a large enterprise scale. Because should you grow your business big enough, you're going to have to hire people who are good at the large enterprise stage, right? Startup. Everybody's wearing 90 different hats and everybody's working together as a team. But then as you really start to grow and you're raising money and you're scaling globally, you have got to hire people. And so having seen what the work environment in a large corporate is like, you will have a better transition. That's just my little sidebar, everybody. So along the way, as a PR agency, did you start to hire people? Were you solopreneur during those years? And please share a few of your favorite fails.
Okay, so did I have people? Yes, I did. Should I have done? No, I shouldn't. The biggest fail, really, Andy, was that I hadn't worked in an agency before, and I didn't understand how you make money in a consultancy or an agency. And what you make money on is the turn, if you like. I think you might have that phrase in America. So you take on an employee, and I should have taken on really highly skilled people and then charged them out at more. Instead of which, I took on loads of students and interns, which felt great. I had about 8 people at one stage. None of them was chargeable. So I started burning money. They weren't very expensive, but when you start getting a lot, you burn through money. And the whole thing was a bit of a disaster, if I'm honest. And I then had a baby in the middle of that. And my biggest client, 2 days after I'd just given birth, they decided to go in-house. I knew they were going to, but I thought that we'd get a couple of months' notice, but they appointed somebody in-house to do this. And that was horrible. And I'm suddenly staring at, I'd had a really successful first year, too successful, if I'm honest. I was really lucky with a lot of things. And that brought me down to earth. And I've got a new baby, so I've got to prioritize my family. And I then got a tax bill for £20,000, which I didn't have. So that was my big shock. And I went to my husband and said, could you lend me £20,000? And he took a day off. He never took time off. And he said to me in the evening, I took the day off and went up to the Dales to have a think. And I felt about that high. I felt like a little schoolgirl. And he said, yes, I'm going to. I realize how hard it's been with the business. And you've picked up a lot of the costs in the house. And we split the cost between us. And he said, yeah, I recognize it being hard. So, and he made me sell some shares that I had, which I thought was really mean of. But do you know what? We sorted it out. I have never, ever been in debt again. I've never had that
Wonderful.
crisis. I didn't
Yeah.
want to go through that. It was such a good lesson. Honestly, it was like your father. We don't have that kind of relationship, I can
Yeah.
assure you.
No,
So
but
that was such a lesson for me, to save money as I went and to have my tax handy, and
oh,
to pay and to
absolutely.
save and to save. Um, so that was, those were my horrors, and I learned then how I didn't understand. People talk about the profit drivers of a business, and I don't think I would have understood that phrase, if I'm honest. People used then to be talking about how much you could borrow to start a business, and I would say, don't borrow if you can afford it. Try and save money so that
Yeah.
you're in control. Nobody ever talks about that, and I really thought hard about that and the lessons that I had and the way that we started. And I should have saved some money first, got a job, probably get some proper money behind me, because I was really tight when I was starting.
Yeah.
And a whole lot of things would have been better. But I learned from it, and then I started saving, so I had money behind me then when I launched the second business. So you do learn from all of that,
Well,
Andy.
and I love so much of what you said, and everybody, I'm having a big Andy-licious moment here. First of all, having conversations with your beloveds, especially if they're not an entrepreneur, is really important. So it wasn't like, Victoria's husband had the purse strings. It was, look, we're in partnership here. As a partner, you need to honor your partner on any capital expenditures or debt capacity increases, right? And so, and yeah, he had to go down to the pub and think about life for a minute and supporting his wife. And because when you're not an entrepreneur, this is really big and it can be really scary. And so I want to encourage you to always talk about, when you've launched a business, if you're in a love partnership, be sure to have them on board, let them know what might be expected. Some of the, maybe you might need to borrow from the 401k, those kind of really tough conversations while you build your business. The two other things I got to take away from this, Victoria, just so wonderful. Taxes, everybody. You have to pay your taxes. And here in the US, quarterly, just hop online, just take, a percentage right off the top and pay them. Work with your Dream Team member. Dream Team is your accountant, your attorney, your insurance broker, right? And your banker. These are the people going to protect you. Work with them, make sure that you're paying your taxes. And then third was the interns. Now, Victoria, I feel very strongly, and I'm so glad you brought this up because this is a great teaching moment. Founders, startups, you have no business hiring interns. They're for a company that's further along. Do not listen to anybody who's saying that. And my lovely interns out there, I say this with all due respect. A founder has no time to onboard you and train you to do what you're doing. Victoria's lesson that she learned, please take this to heart, is so important. Hire the experts who can hit the ground running, who know more than you do. And as she said, and are chargeable. You can do billable rates if you're a service provider. But Victoria, I cannot thank you enough for sharing that as a learning moment for us.
No, my pleasure, Andy. My pleasure. I learned a lot from it. Still kind of.
Well, but you had years of this wonderful growing a business, managing your family, and for many women folks, it's a lot of times we'll launch a business just because we want some flexibility. Was that the
Yeah.
case for you, Victoria?
Yes, and I think particularly, I think I wanted to be in control. And coming up here, there was that whole thing about my husband would only marry me if I worked, because I'd be a nightmare. But I think really, as time went on and I had a family, you can combine. I've made every school play, every Christmas carol, every birthday that I wanted to be there. I might be working through the night sometimes, but I could prioritize my family in a way. I used to have Wednesday afternoon off every week to go and pick up my kids from the school. I felt very uncomfortable at the school gates. I wasn't great at sort of suddenly rushing out and doing lots of mum baking chats and things, even though I love baking. But I felt it was really important to be part of their lives at the school gates and things, and have a weekday afternoon with them. And I did all of that. So I don't have that guilt that lots of people do, and that is a luxury. It really is. So I find it was hard, a lot of it really hard with the business. We had our ups and downs. The recession, when it came in where are we, sort of the 2018,
Yes.
that the crash, my business, I was huge amounts of public sector. I knew I was vulnerable. I had one big client, really vulnerable. But, every year we said we must be more diverse, we must get other business. And then this client piled more on us, and it was great. It was really cash flow generous. They paid up front, and it just was hard. And then the recession came, and it
Ouch.
overnight I had to rebuild the business. It was horrible.
Yeah.
I went out to Dubai to get business. I really struggled for a few years then. But despite all of that, you still, I think you're living your values, and you're in control of a lot of things, not everything with the
That's
business, but
right.
it
So
means a lot.
when was the moment that you started getting folks coming to you regarding what am I going to do post retirement? Like I'm in my 50s and I'm like starting to think like, do I have to shut things down when I turn 60? What happened and how did this compel you to launch Next Up?
Yes. Well, there were two things happening. So we had moved into digital. I was a very early adopter of very professional social media, LinkedIn, particularly blogging, and using that to win business and using that to help our clients. But you know what? Our clients they were more professions and they were senior, and they never really got social media. They never really owned. We did some amazing campaigns. They needed to own that last bit themselves. You can't do everything for somebody on LinkedIn. They have to go, God, Andy, you're from school. Do you remember what there's that bit where it's got to be quite personal in the end? And they weren't getting it. And whereas we had been really storming and doing great things for our clients, I was looking at what we were invoicing and thinking, do you know what? It's missing something. I'm not feeling great about what we're doing for them because they're not maximizing this. So I had that going on the one hand, and then I also had people being sent to us. And one thing, Andy, I've always done right from the beginning is to get somebody external every year to run a business planning session, because I think particularly when you've been going for some time, and we've always had a really good team around us, and so if people stay for a long time, there's a danger of groupthink going on. So I always brought in somebody external to challenge us on our business planning, and I got in a fantastic professor, Professor Nigel Lockett. And he worked with me beforehand, before the day, and he looked at our business and he said, you've got 3 businesses here. And one of them was with the individuals. People were asking for help on a personal basis to help them with their LinkedIn once they had retired. Also, I'd had somebody there. So she was introduced to me. We had a coffee because she moved to the area and didn't know anybody. And she'd written to people saying, can I help you? She just retired. And in the coffee, she said to me, I always had this idea for a business. And I kind of grab it as you would have done, Andy, and go, yeah, what happened to it? And she said, well, I'm going to be 60 next year. And I said, yeah. And she said, well, people retire, don't they? And I think it was a year younger. And I said, well, I'm going to work for another 20 or 30 years. And she said later, I looked at you and thought, you can work for another 20 or 30 years. Work for another 20 or 30 years. That was literally it. And it switched a button in her head to say, I can carry on. She was really senior, and she didn't get there without being quite competitive. And by the end of it, the coffee turned into lunch. By the end of the lunch, we had launched her business. So I helped her, did minor things like helping her do a website. She didn't need much, and just helped her get going. So she was one of the people in here that all these little stories, Nigel looked at it and said, you've got a business here. Actually, it started with, he said, you need an online membership platform. I'll never forget that, for people who've retired. Now, that's really hard to start
a subscription platform. Yeah, subscription model.
Didn't know where people were and, to go and find them. And the point was they weren't online. Therefore, that was the opportunity for us to help them get online. But that means you can't sell to them online. So actually, where did you find these people? And we ended up talking about going to flipping golf clubs and things, which seemed so we had to flip the model then. And we're now working with corporates who pay. It was quite interesting, Andy, because in that first year when we launched, we were working with, at that stage, we're now working with everybody, but they were quite senior people who'd been in corporates. And you think about the percentage of women who are senior at this moment who'd be retiring compared to the men. So I spoke to hundreds of people, individuals. What percentage would you think would be the people who were paying us, men versus women, who were saying, oh, yes, it's a great idea. Right. How much? Let's get going.
Oh,
What
the men.
percentage do you... So, yeah, would you think men or women? More men or
Men,
women?
more men.
No, 95% were women. Yeah.
Oh my
So,
gosh. This is
so
wonderful news. Because usually women are twice before.
and actually, interesting, you see. So I love men to bits, you know, I've got great time for them, but they would say themselves, have had quite blessed careers.
Yes.
And this was why it was so hard for them, because suddenly, for the first time in their lives, they weren't achieving when they'd retired. They weren't getting the non-exec roles they thought would just be, everybody would want them. And of course, the world's changing there.
Yeah.
So the men would be thinking, oh, I don't need to pay. And they're used to having corporates paying for everything. So it wasn't, you know, putting their hand in their pocket didn't come naturally. And someone said, oh, you know, my wife, she now realizes there's a finite pot of money for, you know, for us. And I thought, hang on, you've got vintage cars and you go and have amazing lunches and things. This is not exactly huge compared to that lifestyle, but there's a sort of mental process here. I'm not going to pay. Whereas women, all along, they just go, right, I need help. And I think that's why they've got on and been successful.
I
because
love this.
Time and planning into their personal development. And I don't think the men understand how much they do just to get, you know, they pay and they get good help for them. And then they're off. And the men are going, or the women are taking all the roles. Well, actually, they're working really hard at it, in fact. So it's quite an interesting sort of insight there.
Yeah. I am so fascinated by that data, because men usually will write the checks, you know, for political campaigns, for their alumni, to, you know, fix the car, take care of the house. They know they got to pay for that expert. But I didn't think of it in the context of personal development. Of course, the women have been paying for personal development all their lives. They're like, absolutely, I'm going to need help in this category. I love that. And I love that the fact that the women were thinking, okay, I want to get ahead. And I love the bias the guys had. The women are taking all the roles.
I know.
Too bad, so sad.
You have had a good time and they kind of know it. So, you know, just maybe even things up a little bit now, maybe.
And Victoria, I really love your business model for Next Up, because yes, you're helping individuals, but I'm curious as to where is the benefit for corporations? Why? How did you get the B2B channel going?
Well, hard. And to be honest, it was hard to work out why should they. You know, we spent ages in this office kind of, why would you, if you're a corporate, why would you pay? So where it started was great, because we started with professional firms. So professional firms have partners, and partners are quite collegiate. So there's a feeling of, this could be me next year. So they tend to look after each other much more. And I was lucky to get a client where they were already doing some things, helping people to get non-exec roles, funny enough, and they were working with headhunters and others. But the partners themselves were beginning to change what they wanted. So whereas they had wanted those non-exec roles, they're beginning now to question. I mean, the risk rewards are quite substantial, particularly for the big, in this country, you know, the FTSEs or whatever, the big listed companies, public companies. And they were beginning to question, is that really what I want? Is it just more of the same? But what the heck do I do if I don't do this? So this was where they were really lost. And so what we've been doing is running workshops, and tremendously, I've got Magic Circle now and international law firms and Big Four and all the rest of it. It's home territory. So I'm quite lucky, because I understand, you know, I'm married to, I've worked there all my lives. You know, I understand those partners inside out, really. So we've got a 2-day workshop, and we're getting 100% of partners recommending us. They are quite challenging and cynical, so to get that kind of recommendation is amazing. And everybody's rebooking straight away, going, this is amazing. So that's really good for us, and we're trying to scale that, but it feels quite exclusive, if I'm honest. You know, we're helping. I remember my sister saying to me, but if they earn all this money, why do they need help? And of course, it doesn't matter how much you earn, you still need help, and you can still be lost. I mean, people at this stage of life can have some really serious mental health problems. So that it doesn't mean that you're going to be successful because you have been. It doesn't mean you will be for the future. So that was very good. So we were then getting the understanding. We're very much about storytelling, bringing in loads of people. And That's the great thing about being this age, Andy, is I'm so well networked, and I know people all around the world, all networks of different sectors and storytelling. So that's what we're doing, the storytelling. And we also help them with skills. Really, it's about to comm skills for the individual, about personal branding. Try and not use those words, but a kind of, you don't want to be somebody who was somebody. You want to be, I am somebody.
Oh my
So
gosh.
we talk about, yeah,
Can we just
and
sit
we
with
do
that for a
network.
second? Victoria, let's
Yeah,
just
yeah,
sit.
yeah. Go, go,
Let's sit with that for a
go.
second. This is so important, everyone. The indoctrination that we experience that has contributed tremendously to ageism. And as Victoria often mentions, that the wasted talent of an entire generation because we put them out to farm, out to the field too soon. You're right. We can get totally locked on, especially if we had a career that had a lot of prestige to it, perhaps, or you felt really a lot of your self-worth was tied up in that role. And all of a sudden now you're no longer that role and you're trying to discover what it is that I am today and finding the value and the self-worth of that I am today, especially if you're having to learn new skills. So I just get so excited when I hear this business model of yours and how you were serving all these different walks of life. And it's something that can be done remotely. It can be done with courses and online, self-directed, or with your help. Um, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted, for everybody to take in that moment, the I was versus the I am. How do you get them to shift off of that?
Well, the thing I say is, first of all, have some kind of a plan. There's all sorts of people giving advice, and they say don't jump into something immediately. Give yourself some time to think and reflect. Yes, up to a point, I say. What I've said is, look, even if one of the things we've been getting people to do is to mentor tech entrepreneurs, and I make that part of the workshop, and it's amazing because what I'm saying is, you have got skills that are so valuable to the outside world. This kind of prestigious non-exec career that you had in your mind now, but actually go and find, you might find it so much more rewarding. And initially I did it slightly sneakily because they're not necessarily very good at tech at this age, and I did it to show them that actually they need to get into tech and it's not so hard as you think. And actually, if they get into the tech, then that world opens up so many more possibilities. So the young entrepreneurs absolutely love having their help because they've got contacts. They're very good on people things. They ask very good questions very often and really get people to challenge. And a lot of them say, I've been in my own bubble because we've done some of these things in a room with Leeds City Council have been so supportive. They see it as intergenerational things, this. And you go around the room and I can hear people going, look, I'm really sorry, but I just still don't understand your business. What do you do? And the entrepreneurs take it and they go, I'm in a bubble. I'm so used to just people understanding what I'm talking about. And therefore, this is really helpful to them because usually it's going to be older white men. Many of them will be people who fund them. So, in fact, it's really good practice for them to start explaining their business to people who know nothing about what they're
Well,
doing.
and they
So,
may not know
also,
anything about, yeah, that particular segment, right, or industry, but they know about business. And that's the beauty of mentorship. So I think, yeah, that too is a wonderful way to explore what it is you might want to do in this next stage of your life is through mentorship because your lived experience is so valuable. And I can tell you firsthand, having mentored many founders and not sure about what it is they do or may not even really care because it's so darn complicated. But I know how to help them as a founder ask really great questions, but also listening, just that the skill of listening to a founder, helping them have the answer bubble up and providing a mirror or some reflection from your lived experience. Victoria, that's brilliant. So how do you figure out pricing? Because a lot of service industries and a lot of service companies struggle with, well, what do I charge for these services? And of course, you've got your individuals versus what corporate can pay. How did you figure that out?
well, to start, it was fairly easy when people were being sent to us because I had a day rate and it was quite expensive, if I'm honest, as a consultant, as an old woman, etc. So I just would charge them the day rate, depending on the time for doing their LinkedIn and things, and they would pay it, and that was fine. Then I think that was quite expensive when it came to the individuals and going to that bigger market. We now work with corporates who pay for the workshops. But we've also developed an online platform because, as I was saying earlier, that this is quite exclusive, just working with senior people. And to be honest, it doesn't matter who you are. We're working with nurses and firemen and all sorts of people. They can have exactly the same problems when, you're just taking away. It's like a bereavement when you retire. You take away so much from somebody. They don't even realize how much they relied on their title, their identity, their work friends. So this is a really big shock to people. So now we've got the online platform developed, and I'm just beta testing it. I have got some most amazing global names who I can't say them, but who book meetings with me and are talking. I've got a huge bank saying that they want to test this. We're just looking at procurement. You come back to all those ghastly bits and pieces. I want to get going, but anyway, and a global healthcare brand, a global social media brand. It's amazing. So we'll see where that goes. I'm very excited. This is literally the last weeks that this is suddenly, and that's where I think the future is for the business, to build that.
And folks, I want to remind you, you see that 66 behind me, that Route 66? We're all familiar with Route 66 here in the US. Victoria and I are both on Route 66. So see the energy, the excitement, the passion. Think about this platform that Victoria is pulling together. She is a seasoned entrepreneur, so it's a little easier for her than it was 30 some years ago. But also the vision, taking all of that, and she's just you're going to a whole nother level, Victoria, of your own output and input and abilities that you haven't had a chance to tap into with your PR business, right?
Right. And you know what? Out of mentioning these tech entrepreneurs, I have got into the tech community, and I love working with young people. These youngsters starting up businesses, they're a lot braver than I was, to be honest. They don't have security blankets, and they're just amazing. And in Leeds, we have the most amazing tech community and a lot of women. They are so supportive. I have them round for supper, so many of the founders, and they say, right, you need your MVP. And I'm kind of, what's my MVP? And then, right, you need to get your, beta testing. What's beta testing? All the rest of it, all the jargon. And they are so generous. And I can't tell you. So I'm involved. I was the chair for Wild Digital, Women in Leeds Digital. And we've now become Wild Digital, which is getting more diversity into tech. So I've got all these fantastic young women particularly, but also young men too. And we've got this most amazing community, supported hugely by Leeds City Council, which is just phenomenal in terms of encouraging innovation and entrepreneurship, and so supportive that all of that's encouraged me just to go a bit further and to think, I'm not a tech, but they show me what to do. They've introduced me to people. And honestly, it is so much, I can't begin to tell you. I kind of have shivers down my spine because it's so supportive. And we're so lucky up here to have such an amazing community. I love being part of it.
It really can help on so many levels. So those of you who are thinking of retiring but going into what Victoria loves to call unretirement, think about where you can mentor and where you can volunteer, because it might inspire you as to where you can be and what you can do. And the fastest growing segment of our population launching businesses, what is that, Victoria? Over 50, right?
It is, absolutely. And why not, Andy? Because do you know what? I feel like this is my time of life. It may sound bizarre, but I feel like all the skills that I've been building, apparently Steve Jobs, I can't find where it was, but apparently he said something when he founded Apple, that it brought together a whole bunch of, things like he'd done graphic design or something,
Yes.
and all sorts of other bits came together when the famous fonts and things. And I sort of feel like it's my networks and contacts. I like to think I've treated people really well and helped a lot of people on the way, and they're now helping me back in spades now. And I've got the contacts and things in the networks, but I've got those communication skills, storytelling, PR. I've got all those skills of things that I've been doing over the years. That's all coming into play now, partly in the actual business, because I think what we're doing differently from other people, you've got coaches, but what people struggle with at this time of life is coaching brings out what your ideas are and helps you to do that. But if you have no ideas, I don't quite know how a coach works on that, because they're lacking the initial ideas. Once we've done, so we give people so many ideas what they could do and the confidence, and then you can work with a coach to say, well, what am I going to do and how do I do it and
Awesome.
things.
That's
So that's
wonderful.
inspiring.
Yeah, that's a huge fear for folks because you've been locked into this one, not rut, but this one lane. You're
Yeah.
in your career. And now it's like, well, what could I do? And folks, you got to pull on those threads. And so to have someone who comes up with a bunch of different ideas, remember there's no wrong move. You pull in a thread, you go, I'm good at that, but I really don't like it. And then you pull in another one, you're like, oh, definitely not that. So, it's stay curious as to what's next.
So we work with law firms, and one group I thought was insightful, to be honest. They said, could you help us to deal with rejection and failure? So I thought about it for a bit and I said, look, it's only rejection and failure if you set the bar that it's going to be rejection and failure. If you say, I'm going to try lots of new things, some will work, in which case, fantastic. Some won't, in which case, learn why not. Don't go and repeat it. And then think, what is it about it that I don't like? And what is it that I am wanting? And it helps you work through. So just go and experiment. There's no handbook for this time of life. And it is it's going to be quite daunting to begin with, to be honest. But then once you get into it, I think it takes people between 2 to 5 years to settle into where they thought they might be, but they had no idea what that actually was. But they
Right.
think, I'm really loving life now. And it can take a while, but that's reassuring to hear people saying that. Because if you're finding it a bit taking time, you don't think I'm a personal failure, which is what the problem was before. Because nobody talks about this, Ande.
No,
And
they
therefore
don't.
you don't know everybody's having a tough time.
And I love everything that you're touching on. You often refer to this time as being like retirement as being morally wrong. Talk about that.
Okay, so the thing that the human being, the psyche needs in our lives, we need purpose. And what people don't realize, you never stop to think, you've had purpose in spades when you're working. You don't even think about getting up. You've got a mortgage to pay, family bills, whatever. When you start reaching towards, and I know a lot of people still need to earn money. So, for some, this is not an option. They're still looking to earn a lot of money. What tends to be happening is you don't need as much later on, hopefully, if you've managed to save some money. And therefore, you've got so much choice there. You haven't got that purpose to get up in the morning. That's what I keep hearing people saying. I didn't know would anybody care if I didn't get up in the morning? I mean, what a dreadful thing to say, Ande.
Yeah.
And what they're struggling with then is, well, what do you do at this stage? And without purpose, I mean, doctors say they see people at this stage of life aging 10 years in just 2 years when you haven't got purpose and reasons there. So what we have to do is find, and purpose will be different for everybody. For some, looking after your grandkids, maybe purpose, absolutely. Others, going walking every day with friends, that may be enough. But it's finding out what makes you tick and then finding ways to fulfill that. And I think for most people, someone said this was a very Anglo-Saxon thing the other day, but giving back is quite important. I think it is in America hugely. I think it is quite in the UK, less so in some other cultures, but I still think there's something here, and that giving back or helping others hugely makes you feel good about yourself. And I would recommend anybody at this stage of life to go and find people. Apart from anything else, there are a lot of people who will be worse off than you, and that always makes you feel,
Oh yeah,
my life's pretty.
when you can help others, it really helps you shift out of your own narrow focus on yourself. And understandably that you're focused on yourself, because all of a sudden how your day was formed is gone. And now you have this huge empty sea of what, if you don't frame that up and put meaning into that day, you can get that deep hopeless feeling. There's a wonderful book that I read years ago, a good 20 years ago, called The Art of Possibility. And they talk a lot about, the goals and the achievements that we set up and how it's, you categorize them, excuse me, and you measure them and all of that. But when you're doing this exploration period, you have to set the context. and then wait for things to unfold. So by pulling on the threads that you're doing, Victoria, and giving people the questions for being curious and the opportunity to explore, and then say, you know what, I really like gardening. I want to get into that. Maybe I want to grow and sell perennials to my neighbors, or I want to grow from seeds, something to, share with folks. And then the coach can help them figure out how to do that and how to make money and all. Or maybe they want to join a nonprofit organization, all of those things. But I love that you're having these conversations. And I still want to go back because I'm curious as to why corporations care, because, they'll be moving people. Yeah.
So we are really lucky from our business, because our corporations, this country, I think around the world, are facing a huge skills crisis.
Yeah.
And therefore, I keep asking people, so do you have conversations with people when they're retiring and asking people, well, would you like to work maybe part-time or do another role in the company or something? And they kind of go, no. Now, I'm not sure how it is in America, but we've got age discrimination legislation in this country. And actually, it was really good purpose behind it, but it's making those conversations about later life really difficult, and employers are tied up in knots about how you talk to people about what they're going to do. Even opening up retirement questions can be difficult. So what this workshop is doing, it's helping people to own and go and start conversations with their employer themselves, which is worth, I can't begin to tell you, tens of thousands of pounds, because it's opening up succession planning, it's opening up really making the most about re-energizing them. And what I'm doing is suggesting they get involved in companies. Do you have that phrase, ESG initiatives? Environmental, social, and governance.
Absolutely.
And much now, this generation are really good at things like the people side of that, relationship building, which is so much behind so many of those initiatives. And I'm saying use them, re-energize them. I hate this phrase. I hear corporates talking about deadwood at this stage of life because they didn't invest in, the corporate didn't invest in their tech skills. They aren't very good with tech. And now they're reaping whatever it is, it's not rewards, the opposite of it. So actually get them re-energized, involved in the company before they leave. And the other thing is, they are dying to be involved in their company after, and they don't need to be paid. Now, that's an issue. I talked to a major bank about this, and he said, well, a banker in a bank, and he said, the trouble is, if you don't pay people, then their skills aren't valued in the company. And I thought, yeah, I get that. So I don't have all the answers with how do you make that work. But they would love to be your ambassadors in communities and things. There is so much, mentoring. Every company these days wants to go and recruit from wider talent pools in schools and things. They would be brilliant at going out and doing a lot of those relationships and mentoring young people and things.
Right.
That, it's just, there's so much we haven't even begun to think about with what this generation could be doing to help before they leave and then after they've left. And I just, people are actually quite excited about this now. These large corporates are talking to me. I hope it comes to something, because honestly, I see so much potential for their companies in a million different ways.
Oh yeah. And again, they're on a learning curve as well. And I'm just so excited because folks, especially in tech, the age discrimination is crazy. So, for me in the startup world, when I hear someone say, explain it as if you were telling your grandmother, I go, okay, we'll have none of that. Because I could be their grandmother and I know a lot about tech. I know a lot about startups. I know a lot about this industry. So it's rather insulting. But also, we're dealing with Hollywood. We're dealing with the movies and what we see on TV and what we see on memes. I mean, if I see another person who is clearly in their 80s being said, and people are thinking they're 70 or 73, I don't know what I'm going to do because it's just terrible indoctrination. The cap of curls on the head, the stooped shoulders, the cardigan sweater. No. That's much later in life, folks. And women, right? We can have our makeup on. We can be doing our hair, whatever aging looks like for you. But these corporations, it's very exciting for me to hear that they are excited too, because yes, people don't want to be working at the ferocious rate they were working at, but they still want to get up and contribute. When I had my a post every one about aging, because when I turned 50, I said, that's it. My entrepreneurial days are over. Got to hang up my dancing shoes, right? And of course, that was 16 years later. I've had 2 more businesses. I got so many wonderful comments in there. One gentleman said, I was so happy to leave corporate and I started a perennial garden, which led me to learning about bees, which led me to honey. And then the next thing I knew, I've got a honey business selling to all the local retailers. That's what Victoria means about pulling on threads. And folks, don't be caged by your age, because I had a 91-year-old on LinkedIn say, hey, I'm 91 and I'm still doing this. And I'm like, oh my God, even I had a bias. 91 and you're on LinkedIn?
Introduce me to him, because I'm just collecting all these stories. Queen was working at 96 up until 3 days before, bless her, she went. And that's what I want to be. She's my role model, actually, for how I think you should live. She's still purposeful, engaged, helping. She gets a bit creaky, but, keeps going. And that's what we need to be doing.
Now, talk a little bit about the LinkedIn profile, because again, this is our brochure. This is our resume. This is where we are talking about how we contribute and what we have built and what we want to build. Do you have a tip that would help folks?
You need to think about, what is it? If I was meeting Ande now and didn't know anything about you, Ande, what do I want to know about you? What would help me to have a conversation? So you want to think about keywords. I hope most people probably watching this will know keywords these days. We're kind of so techie, aren't we? And all the rest. But a lot is done still on search online, not just recruiters and others. I search for loads of people on LinkedIn when I'm looking for help with things. So if you want to be found, think about what might they search for and use those words. But have a profile. Don't make it all about your past. Make it about the present. Somebody challenged me, because I do still say I was a director of EY, and that was a very long time ago, but it still gives me some credibility. But I think what you're wanting to do there is to make your skills relevant to people. Don't make them have to do all the work to think, how could I use you? Give them examples of what you want to do. Show them, storytell with your experience. Make it easy for them. And don't be, somebody said, don't be a wasser, meaning don't be I was something or other. Be now. And LinkedIn goes along with be doing interesting things, so that you've got interesting things on LinkedIn. We've got Trevor as our associate, and he and I do a podcast together, interviewing people, and it's absolutely fabulous. But he was saying when he did retire from a large firm, and he said he had LinkedIn envy. And that was on the first podcast we did. I said, are you serious? I thought that was just teenagers. He said, no, everybody seemed to be doing more interesting things on LinkedIn than I was. And he said, it was only working with you. I've kind of come to see it as being a really good tool. And if you're proactive, you don't get all the rubbish that goes on. Right. And I hadn't realized how much rubbish there is. If you're just sitting there watching, you'll be inundated with all the rubbish stuff out there. If you start engaging properly, and you're not trying to post to be, bullshitty, if that's what
no, but you
sharing insights from what you're doing. That's brilliant. I share insights from meetings. I'll probably share insights with you, Ande. I'll have a think about what was interesting today and share that for other people. Absolutely. And it's brilliant then.
Yeah. And just like you teach other people how to treat you, you teach the algorithms how to treat you wherever you are. So on LinkedIn, if you're doing all the good things, then you can expect the good things to be coming back. Richard, how are you? Speaking of podcasts, phenomenal podcast producer. And he says, I have done numerous interviews with 80 to 98-year-olds, healthcare practitioners, MDs, NDs, researchers, and others still active in their fields.
You know what, Ande? The very first online program that I did, I was working with Prime Women, which is fantastic for women over 50. It's an online magazine. And we did a pilot, and I had 6 women on the first one. 3 of them were in their 80s and wanted help with what do I do next. And the other 3 were in their 70s. And I said, I absolutely love all of you. And they were really lost because they'd had really successful corporate careers, a lawyer and somebody, I think they were with JP Morgan or somebody. And they were saying, I don't really want to retire and I don't know what to do next. So we were really working through, I want to go back to them now and sort of see what they're doing, in fact, and pick up, because it was a while ago
That's
now.
so great. And thank you for reminding me about Prime Women. I will put the link in the show notes, folks, because this is a wonderful organization for women over 50. And especially if you write, they could really use you. So here you are. I know it's been 30 plus years since you're been an entrepreneur. How has this journey served you, Victoria, both personally and professionally?
It's immeasurable, Andy. I don't even know how you put a value on what's happened. It's been fantastic to combine family and personal. For quite a long time, we measure success in. A lot of people measure success of PR agencies by how quickly you grow, not by how long you retain your clients. And after a bit, I decided I don't want to grow beyond, I want to look after my clients. I enjoy being hands-on. And what this has done, it took me a while to sort out my ego, actually, that, you're not measuring success, that you're not in the corporate world way. But once you've sorted that out, actually, it's making a difference to people. And I absolutely love we talked the other day about I did a TED talk about this whole thing of the wasted generation, and in the audience, two people came up to me straight away, and one was an academic, and she said, I thought I'd left things too late. And you've inspired me now. I said, how old are you? And she said, I'm 34. And I said, oh my goodness. But, she was feeling I've missed the boat.
Right.
And then someone else came up to me, and she was quite a senior person. And she said, do you know what? I think I need to talk to my dad. I'm now understanding quite a lot of things. And if we can help change and understand things, you feel like in the end, that's what life's about, isn't it? Making a difference to people. And I have I've lived my values in my business. Yeah, sometimes it's really hard. I've said goodbye to clients I didn't like their ethics, and I really needed the money, and that was a hard decision. But do you know what? You've got to sleep at night, and you've got to meet your maker one day. And I kind of feel, I've not got everything right, but I kind of feel like that's okay. I've had a good life here, and a lot of people have helped me to make that good life, and that means so much to me. It's kind of, I'm lucky beyond words.
Yeah. And folks, the TED Talk that Victoria gives is so wonderful and inspirational. I'll put the link in the show notes as well, so you can hop over and see it. Were you asked to do the TEDx talk, or did you decide you wanted to bring it to the world, or how did that happen?
I decided I wanted to, and I didn't know how to. So we went out and researched. And Sheffield Hallam University, they were doing, I think a lot of universities do these with people, and they have a theme. And I applied and got accepted and things. It's an amazing process because they give you a free coach to work with you. So actually, they, how to make an impact in things. I thought I was quite a good speaker. I realized I was to go a lot further. So they really help to develop what you're doing. It's amazing, the whole process. So if there's something that you feel passionately about and want to change the world, it's worth trying to find somewhere to apply and see if you can do it through them.
That's so wonderful. And a shout out to Brent Manuel over in Ottawa, Canada, for stopping by. He is one of our loyal fans here at the show, and he loves to remind all of us to stay diverse in our hiring and in our community, to be inclusive. And I know that's what you have done with your wonderful business Next Up. Any last thoughts before I pop you into the green room? Because this has been a delicious conversation, folks. You've seen the banner go by. Here's the contact information. And if you know someone who's at a corporation who could use the support of Next Up, be sure to reach out. What are other ways folks can find you? And what last words do you have to share?
Just thank you for joining. I always love feedback. If you have ideas about what we should be doing, or any corporate that you think this is about progressive employers, I think people are really ahead of the game and really want to differentiate themselves and their employer brand. I'd love to talk to them and see how could we work together. It would be fabulous. Oh gosh, Andy, I've so enjoyed this time though. You've dug into my archives of memory for an awful lot of things here. It's been quite an interesting journey. Thank you for that.
I am so happy to have you and celebrate you and share your unique lived experience that has prepared you for what you are doing now. And I love your representation more than anything, as I usually say, something fierce, because your excitement at this age and stage is how we need to reframe, folks, life after 50, after 60, 70, 80. You feel called to do something, and even if you don't know what it is, you deserve to do the research to find out, because the world needs you every minute that you're here. The world needs you, whatever that looks like. Don't let anybody define you, and don't let anybody put you in a cage. And Victoria, you are the best for joining us and reminding of us to remember that we have value no matter what age.
Thank you so much, Andy. You have it in spades. So thank you so much, and good luck to everybody. And I always welcome stories. If you want to be on our podcast and doing something interesting at this stage of life, or good stories to tell for our videos, we love them. So contact us. Thank you, Andy, so much.
Oh my gosh, I'm going to pop you in the green room and I'm going to wrap up the show. I hope you're feeling inspired about what you can do next. And remember, you can launch a business easily after 50 or 60 or 70. Just getting the deeper clarity on what that looks like, pulling on some threads, and be ready for the bouncy ride. You know, it doesn't have to be pretty. It can often be messy and still be really rewarding. So hooray for that. Let me share with you who's coming up next on the Startup Life Live show. We've got a wonderful founder. It's the phenomenal Maya Nijawan, and she's the co-founder and COO of Finch. And this is a fit and tech platform, and it's a financial wellness company focused on helping Gen Z and millennials build wealth and get the credit they deserve at the same time. She is solving a serious problem, and she's going to be joining us on October 18th at 12 p.m. EST. That's a week from today. Oh my gosh, I'm wishing you all so much joy from your journey. I'm in awe and wonder of what you do every day. And I just want to remind you that you are strong enough, you are brave enough, and as we say here in Boston, you are wicked smart enough to do what you're doing. Please stay in touch. Please reach out on the social platforms. Let me know what you're doing. Let's stay connected. And until next time, I'm wishing you a delicious day everywhere you glow. Mwahs to all of you. Cheers.